Hello, we would like to welcome our global audience watching düzdanışaq in English. It is around noon on the eastern seaboard of the United States in Washington, D.C., from where we broadcast. And it's around 9 p.m. in Baku, Azerbaijan, where the majority of our audience lives. This channel, in case you come upon it unexpectedly, broadcasts from Washington, D.C. and discusses the issues related to Azerbaijan, human rights, freedoms, as well as the opposition. In other words, the issues that are not easily available for the opposition-minded persons living in Azerbaijan and the issues that cannot be discussed on the state media. So, without much ado, I would like to welcome our guest who is joining us from Baku, Azerbaijan, Ilgar Mammadov, chairperson of the Republican Alternative Party. Good evening, Chairman Mammadov, and welcome to our broadcast.
Good evening, Ismayıl. Glad to see you.
Before we start, I would like to note that I understand that you're at a considerable linguistic disadvantage because English is not a language in which you normally express yourself. And we will do our best to not catch you on your word. But I'm not a saint. I'm just a journalist. My favorite quote from Keeping Up Appearances is, "Important as I am in certain circles, I have not risen to the level where I can walk on water." So with that said, I'm not a saint, but I'll do my best to not use your linguistic disadvantage to my advantage. But there are lots of issues we would like to discuss with you today, and I apologize to you for the little miscommunication. We were going to pre-record this conversation, but today I ambushed you with a live broadcast. For that, I do apologize, and I feel bad about it. But I am pretty sure that I've witnessed you speak off the cuff at a large gathering last year at Prague Civil Society Gala dinner where you were the guest of honor. So I'm pretty sure you will be fine. You wanted to discuss some issues in English. Let's start with that because we see a deluge of responses from our usual audience, from the Azerbaijani audience, as to why two Azerbaijanis would be speaking a foreign language. This happens when you and I discuss issues in Russian, and today is no exception. Do you think the Azerbaijani audience understands that some of the issues pertaining to Azerbaijan are very important to be voiced in English for the global audience rather than the local audience? Do you think people draw that distinction at all?
Well, this conversation we are going to have, we just started, is not local for a local audience in the first place, for international audience, because so many things are happening right now in our region and involving our neighbors and also involving our political system, and prospects for the region are in question now. So it's important to have a snapshot of our political party opinion for now, for this moment, for this particular moment, which is a turning point for the entire region, or it can become a turning point for the entire region for the next decade. So this interview, you propose to have it in English sometime, and I think the timing is best now because so much international attention is here. So I'm prepared to discuss any issues you think, with your experience, would be interesting to the international monitors or observers of the situation in South Caucasus and beyond, in the context of Azerbaijan.
Well, before, of course, the war with Armenia and the aftermath of the war, but before we get to that, I would like you to go back to the days of the war, when the war was ongoing in its hot phase, as they say. Do you think the coverage of the war was fair, balanced, and honest when it comes to the Western media and when it comes to the international organizations? Or do you think there was some bias in it?
Everything is relative, and I can compare 1990s and even later on. What we saw this time was much more balanced compared to what was in the past. I think more people are informed now among international media and in the international organizations what's the true situation in our region and who is who. And who has been doing what in the past 30 years. Some media outlets have reconsidered their stance, which was too much influenced in the past by the powerful Armenian lobby. Well, of course, there's always a bias, which is tolerable, but sometimes we saw absolutely full blanket support to Armenian position. That happened not that frequently as it used to in the past. So more or less, I'm satisfied with international coverage. I have to tell you that opposition figures, political commentators from Azerbaijan, government figures were also very active. They were not hiding from international media. They were seeking communication, seeking conversations with the international media and the audience, and try to convey the message of Azerbaijan to the world. So I don't have anything to complain about that, and we should continue our presence in the international media and never avoid communication.
When it comes to the media, you mentioned that the government did not hide from the media this time. It seems that it had learned some lessons. But if we remember the first few days of the war, foreign journalists had real difficulty getting to Azerbaijan. When they were present there, some of them, I can name names because it's public knowledge, live on their broadcasts complained that the government has attached minders to them, people who listen in on every conversation they have with the locals and impede them doing their journalistic work. Do you think that the government's decision at the initial stage to disallow any international media, with the exception of Turkish media, into the country was right? And also, if you could comment on the government's decision to throttle the internet access for all the people in Azerbaijan during the conflict, do you think it had its negative impact on the way the people could communicate and deliver their version of the truth to the Western audiences?
Well, in the first days, there were some limitations on international media access to Azerbaijan because probably the government was caught by surprise, Armenian attack, which it had to respond by counteroffensive. And in the first days, in the first hours, and one can understand why that might have happened. But later on, I mean, international media more or less had free access to Azerbaijan, to the sites of bombardment, even to the front line, and we saw many reports on the mainstream and leading international media, not only mainstream, but generally foreign media, covering the war between Armenia and Azerbaijan. So the first day's reaction was something exceptional. Later on, that was more or less fixed. As for the internet access, well, it was I don't know precisely what was the purpose of that, but what I can say that it was not that much efficient. People learned how to avoid those limitations and access through VPN and other technical arrangements. So it was not that much effective. In the first place, it concerned not all internet was blocked, by the way. It mostly concerned the means of communication, messaging, such as WhatsApp and Telegram and Signal and others. So these elements of the internet were limited, access were limited, but that limitations, I mean, they were not efficient. I don't know if the government itself is satisfied by what it has done. Maybe it serves some security purpose. I don't know. I cannot comment. But from the user perspective, it's absolutely not efficient. I could access anything, anywhere, anytime.
Well, let's talk about the opposition. What changed for the opposition if we go back to the 27th of September and look at the heft, at the power the opposition wielded in Azerbaijan before the war and after the war? Do you think that it is fair to say that the popularity of Ilham Aliyev has grown during the war and he enjoys popular support at the level he has never had before in his 17 years in power, if I'm not mistaken? Do you think that the opposition parties, yourself included, your party included, will be able to counteract this rising popularity of the Azerbaijani president and be seen as a formidable force, a force to reckon with by the people or by the West, the Western diplomatic circles and the Western organizations in the future?
Well, it is normal that after a successful military operation, the person who presided over the country and over the army in the first place has gained popularity and is more popular than he has ever been. But this popularity over time evaporates. It will disappear gradually as the country will face the economic consequences and the handling of those economic consequences of the war and of the generally mistaken economic policies which have been pursued by the government in the past decades. But for now, yes, Ilham Aliyev is very popular president of a country which has just won the war, and we are not panicking about that at all. Dynamics of the overall, the dynamics of the country in terms of economy and in terms of daily life, which the victory cannot, the problems in which the victory, whatever glorious it is, whatever satisfying it, the sentiments of the nation cannot fix. So Azerbaijan will face serious problems in the coming years, if not months, in the economy. And to handle those issues and problems, the government will need to communicate and take measures which it could not take in the past. On the other hand, the victory has opened huge opportunities for reform. The political system and political leaders are often afraid of reform because they can position. Right now, the gains during the war and as a result of the war, can be used. He can use that popularity to advance reforms. For example, he doesn't need to falsify the elections anymore. He can have a majority of parliament in his control.
So you think if the elections were held tomorrow, Ilham Aliyev would have the majority in the parliament? Is that what you're saying?
If elections are conducted in the very near future, the chances that he can win, his party can win majority in parliament is quite high. But mean that the majority will be overwhelming. It would be enough for him to stay in power and secure his power, but it doesn't mean that he will have like 90% or even 80% dominance in parliament. But the thing is that he can achieve this by fair vote. And if he understands that, if he can accommodate this policy into his policy, this understanding into his policy, I think this can be a very useful development for the country itself. In general, we would have good opposition representation in parliament and could control and influence the government policies in many areas which the state itself would want to be fixed. Before the war, many people questioned not only the ability or professional ability of President Aliyev, they questioned his intentions regarding the future of this country and his loyalty to the fate of this country, to the future of this country. Now that's not a question. Everybody has seen that he's a sincere citizen who wants good for his country, and he's trying to do his best. Doesn't mean that he's doing everything right. That's a different matter. But so his sincerity is out of question now. The question now is only what he is capable of doing professionally. So in this new situation, I think the strong parliamentary representation in parliament can help, can be in everyone's interest. First of all, we can have free and fair elections, finally, and he will not need to falsify anything. He will have strong international and domestic legitimacy and legality, which never existed in the past. And then the responsible opposition can help develop the system in the right direction.
Do you see yourself, pardon me, do you see yourself at that responsible opposition?
We have been responsible opposition from the very onset of our party, from the very beginning of our party. We are actually one of those parties which, always promoted the idea of inter-party dialogue within the country, and we are engaged in political dialogue with the government, and since March this year. And it has been, not advancing as fast and as good as we would like, but it is advancing slowly. But now we can really jump into a better, inter-party relations and general political structure, political system than we had before. So the victory in the military operation, the current level of popular support to the president opens opportunities which he must utilize for the best of this country.
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, go.
I was going to say, you're talking about the political dialogue with the government that you're engaged in. It's no secret to anyone who observes Azerbaijan more or less closely that your party has come under scrutiny by the public, by fellow opposition parties, as well as journalists, for this exact political dialogue with the government. There are some voices in Azerbaijan who accuse you of collaborating with Ilham Aliyev's regime. Where do you think that line lies in the sand between being engaged in a dialogue and collaborating with one of the most autocratic regimes in wider Europe, some people would say?
Well, first of all, the idea of dialogue we have discussed with you personally in our conversation last year around this time. By the way, I said that if the government offers us a dialogue, a political dialogue, we immediately will grab that opportunity and we'll talk to them, because this is our ideology, that political parties have to talk to each other without preconditions. And in February this year, when the government came up with this idea that let's talk, we absolutely looked at it as an opportunity to engage with the government and draw to their attention the pressing issues which need to be solved. And this dialogue, which we created together, has also changed the atmosphere in the country, political atmosphere in the country. Yes, we were criticized by some political organizations and commentators before the war, but this is not the case, practically not the case, because everyone has seen that the main criticism towards us in that respect was that how you can collaborate they call with a government which is not loyal to the national interest. So the war has demonstrated to everyone that President Aliyev is very much loyal to the national interest and this country, this state, to its future.
Allow me
So
to
that's
ask,
not
I'm sorry, allow me to ask,
that's not
do you think that allowing Russian quote-unquote peacekeepers into the country demonstrated the loyalty of the government to its national interest?
we
Do
will
you think
discuss.
Russians in Azerbaijan is within Azerbaijanis national interest?
We'll discuss it later if you like, because I was going to end this thought on the
Please,
answer on
go
this
ahead.
previous question. So this is in this new situation when nobody is questioning the loyalty of President Aliyev and his government closest, let's say, people to this country, to its future. The questions to us as to why we engage in dialogue, why we try to convince them to act differently, those questions disappeared.
Mhm.
Those questions are not, in the air anymore. They are not visible. People are discussing other matters. So the dialogue was a strategically right decision, which was criticized. We took full responsibility for our policy, and we are proud that we were right. And we will continue insisting that the government continues this dialogue, not only continues the talks, but also delivers real practical results in terms of political reform and democratic changes in our country. Political processes are linked to electoral cycles. And the electoral cycle in that respect is not advantageous to this situation. The next elections are only in 4 and 5 years. So probably we can convince them to reform the electoral system, to reform some law, or maybe change their attitude, general attitude to elections, and have elections earlier and without fear that they will be beaten by opposition at free and fair elections. I think if elections are conducted in the near future, they can enjoy a level of support which will help them to retain the power, which is fine, but at the same time have strong opposition, really strong opposition representation in parliament, which would take us to absolutely new level in terms of opportunities for democratic transit. This is our strategy. It has proven correct so far. It is right to do. We are pushing for that.
Perfect. I don't want to push it along, but I have a lot of questions for you. I would appreciate the opportunity to ask them. So before we get to my next question, I wanted to mention that something strange is going on with our chat on YouTube. People seem to be unable to be asking questions. This is not coming from us. We are not impeding people's ability to be asking questions live. And my Facebook page is open for anybody who wants to ask questions. I'm seeing both platforms, Facebook and YouTube. Let's get to my next question. When we talk about the dialogue with the government, first of all, if you allow me, when you assess the president as being loyal to the Azerbaijani national interest, you probably speak of the view of yourself and maybe people in your party. But I'm pretty sure if we conducted a public opinion poll in the country, the results might be a little different. Azerbaijan is a country where we do not have access to independent polling and its results, unfortunately, and we have not for more than 2 decades. Let me ask you this. When you talk about the dialogue with the government, do you see it as a more or less equal process, or do you think that the government is talking down to you? Because let's be honest, let's not overestimate the power that Real Party has, right? I mean, it only has one representative in the parliament, Erkin Gadirli, whose election itself raised a lot of questions because Erkin Gadirli did not knock on a single door or campaign for a single day, and that's what he admitted on this show. Do you think that when you talk about the dialogue with the government, do you think it's an equal process, or they're telling you what to do? Because the name for that would be something else.
Well, this is first of all, the first part of your question was about the loyalty and how it's viewed. Well, being loyal to a country doesn't mean doing always right things for the country. Those are two different things. One concerns the emotions, the spirit, and your heart. The other concerns your professional ability and the circumstances in which you operate. So these are two different things, and people may confuse when even they ask this question, answer this question. So it's my strong conviction that President Aliyev is loyal to this country, but he is not doing right things. He hasn't been doing right thing until now, and for various reasons. And some of these reasons have disappeared after this war. So he has to change his policies. As for the equality of the dialogue, well, technically, on technical level, I am I have conducted a series of meetings, like maybe 6, 7, maybe more, I don't know. Also telephone conversations with chief of the department of the presidential administration for work with political parties and the presidential administration, which deals with the parliament and with political parties. So I am in direct contact with its chief, and that person reports directly to the president. I think it's pretty, for this moment, it's pretty adequate level of, communication. Which may evolve in the future. At the same time, our parliamentary representative is speaking to the leadership of parliament, to the chairman of the parliament, to the committee chairs, and so on. And he also represents us at the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe. So I think it's pretty equal conversation, reflecting the political circumstances of present day, and has a potential for evolving in the future, depending on the decision of the government to proceed with the reforms on which we insist, and which we believe now can benefit from the circumstances which have been created after the war.
Could you please elaborate on these reforms? What exactly do you think are the most pressing reforms in the country? Do you think that the president and the government in general is prepared to conduct some of the reforms? Do you think that the reforms will have to change the nature of the way Azerbaijan is governed? It's no secret that we are in the leading positions in terms of corruption, based on international organizations' observations. Do you think that the government is truly prepared to root out corruption and nepotism, and applying political pressure to maybe your less fortunate opposition comrades?
Well, the most pressing issue in this reform agenda in our judicial reform. So on the one hand, it's the most difficult part, but at the same time, in terms of managing it, it's the easiest thing. We don't have too many judges, several hundreds of them in the system, in the entire country, and most of them are quite professional. They are not of low quality. Most of them are quite professional. They know what they are doing, but they are absolutely dependent on the political system and political leadership. So they have to be granted full independence. that has to be the first and the most important step in the reform. So we have to have rule of law finally, and rule of law without an independent court is not possible. This is necessary not just for the ideological reason. This is necessary in the first place for economic reasons, by the way, and that's the message we are trying to convey to the government, because Azerbaijan doesn't have much resources. Well, it does have in relative terms, it does have oil and gas and some revenue from that, but in terms of the tasks which stand in front of us for the future, the development goals and progress goals which we pursue, those resources are not enough. They are they are not sufficient for full-fledged development or transforming Azerbaijan into a full-fledged prosperous country. So we have to improve the investment climate in this country. We have to show to everyone in the world that laws are superior here to political decisions by the executive branch. So therefore, I think judicial reform is absolutely crucial, the number one priority for it should be number one priority in the reform agenda if the government accepts it from us.
And that's exactly.
Secondly,
sorry, may I ask you a clarifying question? Exactly, if the government chooses to accept it. The government, it's no secret that judicial reform and rule of law have been the issues pressed by the West and, frankly speaking, by the Azerbaijani civil society for many years. But the government was not listening to anybody. Why would Ilham Aliyev listen to you or anyone now on judicial reform, now that he has emerged as a victor with his, subjectively speaking, rating skyrocketing? Why would he listen at all?
Precisely because of that, because now he can afford it. Previously, he could not. Previously, he was, he knew that the elections are stolen. He knew that he's not that popular. He knew that he cannot win free and fair elections. Now, when he is relatively popular, when he can perform well at parliamentary elections at least, I don't see why he should be avoiding judicial reform, why he should miss this moment, historic moment, to advance the interests of our country in that respect. Given, again, we are going back to this issue of loyalty to the national development, national interest in general. So I think this is a moment, which need to be used, grabbed, and utilized for this reform. And in parallel to that, I think it's important to have a better parliament, more representative parliament, because the parliament which was elected in February this year at snap elections is not representative of the agenda, which the national agenda which exists now and which will exist in the coming years, the transformation, and it does not reflect the realities, the political realities which have been created by the victorious war. So I think early parliamentary elections are necessary, but probably for that we need a change in the electoral system, which we can discuss with the government, and we'll see if they hear us in that respect. As for the corruption matter you mentioned, yes, again, these are intertwined, interlinked issues. So Azerbaijan will need a lot of economic opportunities. You cannot just always spend the oil revenue to build this and that road, or this house or that road, or other economic objects. You have to genuine investment by entrepreneurs who you know, take risk and make profit. So this is how it should function, how the economic system should function here, that investors, local and international, foreign investors, have to agree to take risks, invest, generate wealth, generate income, and develop the country. So in that respect, in the coming decades, as it does not have resources which would support a successful development of our country, with all that 50 billion on the reserve account, reserve fund, most of which, vast majority of which, is not a liquid assets. They are just, various types of assets which you cannot transform into cash needed. So we need investment. We need confidence by entrepreneurs, by business circles, banks. For all that, we need, in the first place, and a representative parliament. That would eliminate corruption, at least most part of it, because you cannot eliminate corruption, in full.
Right. Before we get into the depths of economics, you're going to lose me there, and I'm going to be at a disadvantage. Let me ask you a question that came through a YouTube chat. Orhan Marjan is asking, Ilgar Mammadov was saying that if he does not win the next elections, he will not stay in Real anymore. Did they change their decision after the war? I believe this question goes to the long-term strategy of your party. You said there are no upcoming elections in the next few years. First of all, could you elaborate? Do you think there will be snap elections at any moment in the future, if you could forecast it? And secondly, do you think that the next elections in 5 years will determine your fate in politics and the fate of Real Party? Do you think you're going to leave if you do not achieve success in the next elections?
Well, I said that I have to lead our party to success at 2 elections, one parliamentary and one presidential. What that success will be, time will show. At this moment, I don't know if the snap parliamentary elections will be conducted anytime soon. I'm not going into forecast it. We are working towards that. We want that to happen, but again, not immediately, not instantaneously. We want this to happen through a process of, which includes change in the electoral system, appreciation of those changes by general public, and only then we can have the elections of quality we really want. So I told the public that at next regular parliamentary and presidential elections, I have to lead my party to success. And if that doesn't happen, it's logical to see if the party can have a different leadership. But that's not an immediate prospect, because the elections, both regular parliamentary and regular presidential elections, are not an immediate prospect.
Let me ask you a question that also came from a viewer. Rufat Rahimov is asking, Rufat Rahimov, who resigned from the party, and Javid Gambarli, who was expelled from the party. These members were both parliamentary candidates in the previous elections. In both cases, there was a parliamentary speaker in the party. Ilgar Bey never personally answered these questions. Please ask him as to why they resigned. My question is, do you think that the public is concerned with transparency in Real, especially in the face of high-level resignations? I mean, we can name names. Do you think there's a problem with the public perception of Real's transparency?
All our decisions are transparent and collectively made. I mean, you have witnessed yourself how many accusations of, some people accused me that I am the unilateral, the only person who takes decisions. But now public sees that the decisions in the political committee are made on the basis of collective of members, 6 members, with names of their names are known to public. So all decisions are made in a collective decision and in a transparent way. I don't see any problems. Some people, political parties, they always have people who join and then resign, and then some people even rejoin again. So this is a dynamic process. We cannot judge political party performance based on those individual issues, individual actions. We rather should evaluate party at elections. That's the main purpose. That's our goal, to have such kind of elections where the performance of a political party can be judged in the best way. So individual lives and individual decisions by people, they always change. They are incoming people, outgoing people. So this is a natural process that we are not concerned about.
Let's evaluate Real's performance in the previous elections. Only one of your candidates made it to the parliament, despite how many? Remind me, how many did you field?
In the ballot papers, we had 29 candidates.
So only one of them. Only one of them made it, and some would say he made it due to his personal friendship with Mikhail Jabarov. How do you think Real did in February elections? Did you do as good as you had hoped?
Well, the speculation you just voiced about our candidate who won the election and was allowed to into the parliament is just a speculation. Nobody presented any legal complaint, any legal facts. Nobody ever challenged his victory, in a convincing way.
So they're not friends with Mikhail Jabarov? Is that what you're saying, or?
I don't know who's friend. Our parliamentary member has many friends and many students in the government, very high ranking, by the way. So it's okay for a politician to have many connections. That's an advantage. That is an advantage, and that's an advantage if a politician, including myself or any other, has a lot of connections in the political system.
Do you have friends in the Azerbaijani government, in the presidential administration?
Friends, I wouldn't say friends, but I have a lot of acquaintances in the political system who have been there for many years, and I knew them at different times of their lives. In different positions. I know what kind of persons they are. And that is an advantage. That's not something you should be, ashamed of. You should be ashamed if you don't have connections in the political system, and if you don't know the people. That's how it works. In Azerbaijani political culture, it's immature yet. In many respects. The political culture is immature in that respect. If you have if you know someone in the government, that is part of your guilt. I mean, that is not a serious, not to many. I mean, to some people, who see politics from that immature perspective, from that immature angle. So I think we had more winners than one in these parliamentary elections. Only one was permitted to into the parliament.
Was it right for him to go when his comrades were not allowed to go in?
Absolutely, yes, it was right. We decided in the party that he should go to the parliament, be present, and see how we can utilize his presence there to advance political goals of our party in the best interest of this nation. We have decided that in 1 year time, we will make an evaluation of not his performance, but our presence in Parliament. He's absolutely trustworthy, intelligent, very honest person. We don't have to kind of evaluate him. We're absolutely proud of him in terms of his personality and abilities. We have to evaluate our presence in Parliament, how it works for us and for the country in general, and we will see if we continue that. I mean, that was I think, absolutely wise decision taken by a responsible political party. But at the same time, we challenged results of elections in many constituencies, and cases are now being sent to the European Court of Human Rights.
Okay, if you allow me, you mentioned immature political culture in Azerbaijan, and some people would agree with you. I live in the United States in its political context, and I believe we both can agree that it's a very mature political culture. So in this culture, let me assure you, it would look very strange if in a competitive election, person was allowed to be elected into the U.S. Congress without knocking on a single door, campaigning for a single day, in a competitive district where he had, remind me, I believe 4 other candidates, right? So let's
well, that's not correct representation of what he did. He did campaign. He had meetings. We have video footage, photo footage of his meetings with voters. He knocked the doors. Actually, he did campaign, yes, and we have a lot of material proof of that. So that's misrepresentation of his campaign.
That's probably representation of what he said on this show, but that's fine.
He's not satisfied with his campaign. That's a different matter. That comes from his modest attitude to his, political situation. That's political qualities. But he did campaign, and I witnessed that campaign. I saw how, by the way, he had largest number of election monitors in the polling stations in our party. So he had in every precinct, we had to have one monitor in all other constituencies. In those constituencies where we had strong candidates, we filled all the precincts with observers. In his case, enthusiasm of supporters was so strong that he was able to bring 2 or 3 observers to every precinct to monitor the elections for him. And the general participation rate, the turnout was low. That is why the number of votes which he received was sufficient for him to get elected, and nobody could challenge his performance in a legal way. And we are proud of his victory, but we are very much disappointed. Some other candidates, which we believe have won the elections, they were not permitted to Parliament, and in that respect, of course, this is not the point which reflects, again, the will of people in general, like in speaking in democratic terms, but it can be instrumental to the transformation if there is a political will on the other side, on the government side, and for which we actively call. So I think we should have a better parliament, a new parliament based on new election law, a new electoral system, which the general population appreciates and actively participates in. So, the general turnout at these elections was 15 to 20%, very low confidence. Level, and of course the government reported that it was like 50% or so. That is not correct figure, not correct number. So everybody knows this. That's the past. the war and its results have created a totally new situation.
We will get to the result of the war, Chairman Mammadov. I'm trying to be a little mindful of your time because you only had 1 hour for us. So let me ask you this.
No, I do have time. I do have
Perfect.
time. Okay, let's go.
I'm glad. So let me ask you this: now that your sole representative is in the parliament, does Erkin Gadirli vote his heart, or does he consult with Real Party on his positions on bills that are being introduced in Milli Majlis, in the Parliament of Azerbaijan? And does Real Party have sort of a veto power over how he decides to vote?
Potentially, we do have a veto power, but we have never exercised it. He does regularly consult with us on the issues which are on the agenda of Milli Majlis, of Parliament. When sometimes we discuss those issues before the vote, sometimes we discuss it after. So far, there has not been any major differences between us in the political committee. I mean, the leadership of the party regarding his voting record. So he's pretty well representing our political position.
Perfect. I know you're eager to get to the war and its aftermath.
No, I'm not eager to get to. I'm not eager to get to any war because I'm a peace-loving person.
Discussion of the war. I stand corrected. Thank you. Jamal Javadov is asking me here. What does Ilgar Mammadov think about the end of the war? Will the traditional opposition continue the way it did, or will you have to make changes? First of all, let me ask you, do you consider Real to be part of traditional opposition? And regardless of your answer, what do you think has to change now to make you a formidable political voice? Do you think it'll be harder for you to vote with your to work with your voters, to convince people to support you in the elections if they happen?
Well, traditional opposition usually in Azerbaijan is viewed as the parties which were in power in 1992, 1993, and their heirs, so to speak. These are the parties which are seen as a traditional opposition. The Real Party has got registered only this year, and during the time which I spent in prison, it was to a large extent paralyzed. For almost 6 years, I was in prison, and the party was paralyzed. So we had a brand new start, first start 2 years ago when I was released, and now we are gradually moving to our goal. So we just got registered. We became parliamentary party. We got full I got full acquittal, and now I can run for president. So my all rights are legally restored. You have witnessed how I battled in the Council of Europe, in the Committee of Ministers, and other places in Strasbourg. So we won that battle. So we are, after this new start 2 years ago, are a new political force, different from the parties which were in power in 1992, 1993. And our political vision, our political style is different from what they have been doing and what they are doing now. And will remain different because I think style is something that you is linked to your general intellectual perceptions and culture and the time of when you started your political career and so on.
So when I said you were eager to get to the war, of course, I stand corrected. I meant you were eager to get to the discussion of the war. Earlier, you said that Ilham Aliyev left no doubt in the hearts and minds of the Azerbaijani people that he stands for the national interests. those who might disagree with you would ask you about, and I am asking on their behalf, about the role of the Russian troops in Azerbaijan. In 30 years, we grew accustomed to whatever legitimacy, whatever sovereignty we had, whatever part of our country we had it over, we did not have Russian troops. They left, and we did not have foreign troop presence in our country. Ilham Aliyev, by signing a document, it's not even a treaty, a document whose the content of which we do not know, brought Russian troops back. First of all, two-part question. Are you concerned at all that the government does not tell us what sort of an agreement it reached with Russia and Armenia? And secondly, do you think that the Russian troops in Azerbaijan are in the long-term interest of our country and our people? I apologize. We don't have
Russian
internet.
military presence.
Okay. Would you mind starting over because there was a disruption online? I apologize for that.
Yeah. So brief about the history of Russian. The Russian military was stationed in Azerbaijan until 2012. That was a Gabala radar station. Nominally, that was not a military base, but hundreds, if not thousands, of Russian military personnel served there until very recently, in historic terms, 8 years ago. Only 8 years ago, 9 years ago, that military base was closed down, and thousands of Russian troops, or hundreds, I don't remember precisely, but hundreds or thousands Russian troops left Azerbaijan. And that happened on Ilham Aliyev's watch. It didn't happen anytime earlier. So it was on his watch. And in the past 9 or 8 years, Azerbaijan did not have any Russian military presence in this country. Secondly, you a bit misrepresented the agreement between Russia, Armenia, and Azerbaijan, the statement, joint trilateral statement between the two presidents and the prime minister of Armenia. It is public document. We know what is written there. Of course, they may have verbal agreements, not written agreements. That's a different matter, and that's the usual practice in international relations. And if that verbal agreements go against our national interests or are in line with our national interests, the future developments will show. But the document, the signed document, is available from the first minute of its existence. Actually, it was signed in live broadcast by the president. So we pretty well know what is written there. Now about the Russian deployment of Russian so-called peacekeepers in the former Nagorno-Karabakh autonomous province of Azerbaijan. Our party, the same day, issued a written statement condemning that part of the agreement and saying that our representative will vote in the parliament against endorsing such military presence. So this is our legal position, that if the issue of Russian military presence in Azerbaijan is taken to, we will vote against, and we will call other parliamentarians to vote against this presence. So far, the issue has not been taken to parliament, and that is a political move. So we should look at this from, we should separate the political and legal approach to this. Okay. So legally, we are against it. Politically, we want Aliyev to prove to us that this is really a temporary measure.
Chairman
Really
Mammadov,
temporary
you
measure.
know our constitution does not allow foreign troop presence in Azerbaijan without the ratification by the parliament. So basically, that makes the Russian troops in Azerbaijan invading troops invited by
Absolutely.
the Azerbaijani president in a clear violation of our constitution. Then how can you support? Do you support that?
We don't support. We don't support. We are saying that we don't support. Absolutely. More than that, it is written. It is the language of our statement that if that Russian military presence in the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict area is not ratified by parliament, that would equal invasion. That is absolutely in the statement, political and legal statement made in the first day after the signing of this agreement.
Did you bring up your position in the dialogue with the government to the attention?
Yes,
and what was the reaction?
yes.
What did they say?
Well, what they said, I mean, you can ask them. I'm not speaking for them.
I'm asking you because I do not have access to the government, but you're the opposition party chairman. Is that secret?
Yes, I'm not their spokesman. I'm not spokesman. I don't speak for them. I speak for our party. We delivered our message. We said that we are not satisfied. We said that we are not going to support it in parliament. They had something to tell us in that respect. Well, we'll see. I mean, it's politics. It's politics. We are not that much convinced, but the performance President Aliyev made during this war, how he handled these issues, gives us some confidence in his actions. And of course, we should recognize some time for him to deliver on, in this respect. So
how much time do you think?
He has. Well, let me finish. He has to prove that what he has done was politically expedient, although legally not that much correct, and legally not, not very much in line with our procedures. But we live in a very, very, special geopolitical environment, and at the special times. It was right after the war. We will see if he can deliver on in such a process which will make Russian military presence here very much a temporary thing. And we see political circumstances which make us count that this will be the case. But again, it's too early to make a judgment. We are politicians. I mean, legal professionals, for instance, or regular people would probably look to a legal situation, to a particular status, to very, very formal things when they assess anything, not specifically this situation. Politicians, if they are good politicians, they look at the dynamics, political dynamics of facts. So there are prerequisites, there are signs, let's say, political developments which make us let us think that President Aliyev may deliver in this respect and will have the Russian military presence here eliminated very soon. If not, at some point of time, the case have to be taken to Parliament, and we will, of course, vote against. Vote them out. Of course, our vote is very insignificant, only 1 out of 125, but we'll make call for other parliamentarians to act the same way. And also, we will, of course, talk directly to the people in this respect. But so far, we have to grant time to President Aliyev in this respect and prove that what he's doing to settle this conflict fully is really a visionary thing. We don't have reasons to suspect that he doesn't have a vision.
Okay.
He might have a vision.
Right.
And there are grounds for that.
I understand. I believe we can accept your answer. Let me ask you this as a politician. You said you're a politician. So let me ask you this as a politician. Put yourself in Ilham Aliyev's shoes for a minute, if you will, and try to understand, try to answer why would a president like Ilham Aliyev not put this matter to the parliament in the first place? In other words, why wouldn't he have a vote in the Azerbaijani parliament on the presence of Russian troops? It would probably be laughable to suggest that he didn't think that the measure would pass the rubber stamp parliament that it is in Azerbaijan right now, right? What other reasons do you think he might have not to put it to the parliament? Is that so he would have, let's say, a wiggle room to declare the Russian troop presence illegal at some time in the future? Or maybe there is something that I am not seeing. What do you think as a politician?
Precisely that. Precisely that. He wants to have the Russian military presence to be as least legal as possible, so that we as a state could challenge, or as a people, we could challenge.
I apologize. I apologize for the internet interruption. So we as a people could challenge, Chairman Mammadov. That's the last word we heard. We as a people could challenge, and then you disappeared for a second.
Well, do you hear me now? Do you hear me now? Yeah. Do you hear me now? So shall I repeat
if you don't
what
mind,
I said?
Please.
That's precisely the reason why I think he is not sure. You know?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes. So I think that's precisely the reason why he's not taking the case to Parliament, because he wants to keep the legality of Russian military presence here as low as possible, so that it can be easily challenged if necessary, if Russian troops do not perform the way which we expect them to perform in the result, and putting the end to this confrontation we had with Armenia.
I apologize for the internet interruptions. From time to time you disappear. That's why we ask you to repeat your questions, so there would be no misunderstandings. Let me ask you this. In Russian, there is a proverb, bad is a soldier who doesn't dream of becoming a general. Since we're talking about putting yourself in President Aliyev's shoes, do you think you would have fared better had you been the president of Azerbaijan? You've been running in the past. Your party is ambitious. It wants to come to power. Do you think any opposition politician, not to put you on the spot, but any opposition politician would have managed the war and its aftermath for 1 month at least better than Ilham Aliyev did?
Well, I tried to run at parliamentary elections in 2013, and I was immediately arrested and put in jail for 6 years. So that's again not exactly right for president. The war which President Aliyev waged against Armenia was very much his war. What I mean, it was the system he built which was performing in this war. If Azerbaijan was a different state, for example, a more democratic, probably it would have a different army, it would have a different style, it would have different coalition supporting the country, or maybe it would have the same, maybe broader coalition. We don't know. We don't know. As a professional historian, I can say that you never know what would happen differently if you change one factor. So I think this is not a fair approach to very recent history we had. I think he built a system which performed, which could only perform under his leadership in this war. If somebody else was a leader of this country and had time to develop a system would function differently in terms of not only military, military operation, but also in terms of the international coalitions built around and for the purpose of this war.
Mm-hmm. Well, we often heard from our viewers during the live broadcasts in which we solicit the viewership, viewers' opinion, that Russia has not only become a military presence in Azerbaijan, but it has also somehow insinuated its way into the relations between the opposition and the government in Azerbaijan. I believe we're having those camera problems right now that you warned me about when we started the broadcast. I'll give you a couple of minutes to switch it. Yes, I'll give you a couple of minutes to switch it, and if you can hear me, I'll continue to ask my question. Russia somehow has insinuated its way into the relations between the Azerbaijani opposition and the government. Do you think that it has become a little more difficult? Do you think that Russia is on the side of our opposition? Do you think it'll make it more difficult for opposition politicians and maybe members of parliament to come to power? And basically, is Russia guarding Ilham Aliyev's rule, do you think?
Well, I don't know in what way Russia interfered with opposition here. I know that for a long time in the government, at top level of the government, there were people, strong politicians, strong representatives, which had undeniable and very much open, and I would say even sincere relations with Russia. Nobody hid those relations, and they were proud of them. And that team has basically has been discharged. That team has been expelled from the political system, from the very top of the political system, starting a year ago, last November, by firing chief of presidential administration, and then some other people, and then conducting parliamentary elections and removing some of the very much pro-Russian people from the parliament. So that if you want, representation is over in the government. I don't know how they are represented in opposition. I don't see that, but some people speculated that the so-called old guard, pro-Russian old guard in the President Aliyev's former government, we can already say former government, somehow worked together and coordinated activities with some parts of the opposition. I don't know if that's true or not, but I think we should look forward in a new way towards relations, towards our relations with Russia. Mm-hmm. And not have a narrow view of our relations with Russia in that respect. I think the chances, the openings we have now for democratic transition should not exclude pro-Russian voices in our society. On the contrary, they should invite them to be present in the political system, so they contribute to democratic process. My strong conviction is that in a truly democratic process in Azerbaijan, our independence and affiliation with European values and Europe will be unquestioned. But we still have voters, a lot of voters, which would vote honestly for a party which stands for good relations with Russia. So let them be present in parliament, legally, officially, and have a genuine democratic political process. We should not ostracize any political force based on the very fact that they are standing for better relations with Russia or with Turkey or with United States. I don't know, whoever else. So I think we should start thinking of politics in which we have a genuine representation in parliament, and then see how that genuine representation in parliament works towards our national interest. That is the way to look at our future relations with Russia, with Turkey, with European Union, and the United States, and even with Iran. So I think we should totally change our approach, because the question you asked, a traditional approach to that question, which would require the people who participate or manage the political process to exclude someone. I don't want someone to be excluded. Let everyone be invited. Let everyone compete in a fair way. I don't think pro-Russian forces or voices will get, even a strong minority in the parliament. I think they will be very marginal, but they can be heard all the time. And this representation process then can be incorporated on our foreign policy decision-making process, and will make it more civilized.
Let me ask you, if I didn't understand you mistakenly, Chairman Mammadov, you said that being a pro-Russian voice does not necessarily exclude that from being a pro-democratic voice. Is that what I heard you say?
No, no. I didn't say that. I said that all voices should participate in the political process in a democratic way, and all voices have to be heard. And I think that then we have to see how we can use this democratic participation and representation to advance our national interest in relations with Russia, with Iran, with Turkey, European Union, and United States.
But do you think that relations with Russia, which not many people would call a democratic nation, would not be mutually exclusive with good relations with Europe? Because let's look at our neighbor Armenia. Nikol Pashinyan, Armenian Prime Minister, has attempted to pursue a more pro-European or pro-Western foreign policy, and some people would say that he was punished by those in Russia who did not like that, namely President Putin. Do you think that Azerbaijan can pursue closer ties with Russia and at the same time not damage its relations with the West, and vice versa? And if you may put this in a context of how the West has behaved during the war towards Azerbaijan, was it an approach that won a lot of allies in our society for the West and Western institutions and Western ideals? I would like you to look at the position of France and the United States, if you don't mind.
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, about future relations with Russia, as I said, we have to offer to our country absolutely new vision of relations with Russia, and also convince the Russian side that Azerbaijan will become a democracy. Don't meddle with the democracy, accept the results of our democratic process, and try to work with democratic process, and given the quite a strong Russian-speaking population here, so all those voices we are sympathetic towards Russia in general should be heard, and their positions have to be incorporated in our statehood, in our democratic system, and they should not feel alienated by our political system. This is how we should build relations with Russia. Armenia is a different case in that respect. Armenia has closed all the Russian schools. Very few Armenians speak Russian. At the same time, they enjoy all kind of economic support from Russia. They have a military support from Russia. We are not that dependent from Russia. Absolutely. We are independent. At the same time, we are very much open culturally. We have hundreds of Russian-speaking schools here. We have never closed them. We have demonstrated respect to Russian minority in all respects here. Azerbaijan's experience in dealing with what can be termed as Russian is quite different from what is the situation on the ground in Armenia. So Armenia is an absolutely different case, not comparable. So if we are respectful to the Russian-speaking minority, if we are not closing Russian schools, if we are capable of building a democratic state in which pro-Russian or pro-Iranian, pro-American, pro-European, pro-Turkish political parties have fair, adequate, based on popular will representation in parliament, why it should offend someone? Or if someone is offended, then that's an absolutely different situation than it existed in Armenia, which with its controversial experience. Now, answering your other question about West and its attitude to Azerbaijan during this war, I think it was more or less good. We did not see much interference in the process, because everyone in the West understands that Azerbaijan was acting in line with international law. We have suffered a lot. For 30 years, we tolerated, so to speak, this military occupation. Azerbaijan has given enormous amount of time to international mediators to convince Armenians to settle the matter peacefully. So 28 or 30, almost 30 years, we have been peacefully negotiating. Only when all the resources in that respect have been exhausted, Azerbaijan made a counter-offensive against another military provocation from Armenia and gained control over its territory. So despite the fact that there are some voices in the West which were critical of the military counteroffensive we had, and despite the fact that French Parliament voted contrary to the position of its own government and supported Armenia, I think overall Western attitude to the cause of Azerbaijan during the war in September, October and November this year was fair and more or less balanced.
If you were if I asked you to identify one issue on which you and the government and the position of President Ilham Aliyev and the Azerbaijani government differ the most, what would that issue be? What do you think that the government of Azerbaijan is doing that is absolutely wrong and you would have preferred it to be done a completely different way? Is there such an issue?
Let me name two issues, and I would repeat again. That's the issue of rule of law, in which the government is doing very poorly, and it is not up to its obligation in the Council of Europe regarding the execution of judgments of the European Court of Human Rights. Azerbaijan has the worst record of in that respect, in respect of execution of the judgments of the European Court. So we are on the top of the list of non-performers, and that's directly linked to the issue of rule of law in Azerbaijan. So we totally oppose the government's position and view and actions in this respect. And secondly, we very much oppose its policy in the economic area, in the economic field, this over-reliance on oil and gas revenues, and creating a social contract based on distribution of proceedings, the
Proceeds
distribution
from
of
the oil.
revenues.
Yeah.
Or revenues from oil and gas. So that's not the way to go. So we challenge the government in the first place regarding the issue of rule of law, and second, regarding the over-reliance on oil and gas revenues.
If I may ask you about the government's response to COVID, because I see on your website that you are criticizing the government's decision to impose a quarantine in the country. Two-part question, if you don't mind. Does the government use the issue of COVID, coronavirus pandemic, to further curtail human rights in Azerbaijan? Has it happened before? Is it still doing it now? And second, do you think that the response of other nations, I see that you shared here a comparative analysis between Azerbaijan and the Western countries, the countries of Europe, and I see Belarus here as well. I'll show the screen so people would understand. I'm hesitant because it's in Azerbaijani, but people could see the table that you shared. Do you think that the government's response to COVID right now, imposing total quarantine, is unnecessary and uncalled for?
It is absolutely not based on significant, scientific data, first of all. But we challenge the policy in the first place from a different standpoint. We say that we want to know the people who prompt the government to take decisions in that respect. Do not know the people who are proposing the policies the government is formally endorsing. Be that the lockdown, stricter lockdown, no lockdown. We don't know who are those scientists who advise this or that position. Second, we want to know the data. What are they hiding? What are they hiding? Because we have done some research and discovered a lot of differences between the official statistics with the COVID statistic the government is presenting to public and the other statistics. We have exposed those differences, and they tell us that either they or they are using wrong data. In practice, during this so many years, since March, so from time to time they apply different models of response, which tried in other countries without any logic. I mean, they copy Russian example in some cases, then they copy some European experience, and now they are totally copying the Turkish experience. If Turks are doing good, weapons, drones, that they are good in, planning COVID response. So we have many arguments in that respect, and we are challenging with data and research. Unfortunately, the government is not responsive to they simply neglect, they ignore our criticism, despite the fact that we have presented profound amount of data and research concerning their policies. So we do challenge their policies. As to the question, if they are using the COVID response to curtail human rights, that was the case in the early months. Let's say for a few months before the let's say up to summer. Mm-hmm. They didn't know how to respond. And when people protested, people raised questions. Of course, they curtailed human rights and conducted police operations, which were absolutely unnecessary, unlawful, and even humiliating to people and human rights. So, later on, they did not apply COVID response to that to that purpose. They didn't use it to that purpose. but the new tight restrictions, which they are imposing since the day after tomorrow, maximum 3 hours. You can be out of home for 3 hours maximum. You can get permission for that, electronic permission for that every day. Wear a mask even if there's no people around you in a street.
Do you think that's excessive? Do you think that is too much to ask?
Absolutely too much, and that's the practice which is used in Turkey, and I'm very, disappointed that we copy this experience of this or any other country in a chaotic way without any consistency. It proves the point that the government doesn't have a consistent policy, consistent vision how to tackle this problem. And therefore it uses in a chaotic, disorderly way different practices, not really necessary in Azerbaijan. And also harmful to our economy, to our future and well-being of ordinary people. We will continue challenging it from the scientific point of view and from the political management point of view. And I think this will be one of the factors, by the way, which will contribute to gradual decline in popularity of the President Aliyev in future. One of the factors, not the only factor, may also contribute, given the past record, to exploitation of this COVID-19 pandemic, to limit or reduce to limit human rights. Let's say so.
I understand. Let me ask you this. I kept you for an hour and a half, and I appreciate your time. Let me ask you this at the end. What do you expect of the incoming administration of President-elect Joe Biden in the United States? Do you think that the relations between the U.S. and Azerbaijan will change? In what way? Since I know you don't like making forecasts, but now you just did, and it was very interesting to hear.
I do like making forecasts when this is an area of my expertise or political right. I mean, you have to excuse me. I don't want to interfere into American political process at the moment when there is no final judicial or legal decision. I will send a letter of congratulation to any person who is proclaimed officially the President of the United States.
So you don't think Joe Biden was duly elected?
I don't know. Let this be settled fully. I don't have the right to interfere. I don't have the right to interfere into American political process. So election process, let it be completed, and I will sincerely congratulate any person who is the winner of the political process, and only then we will look into the future of U.S.-Azerbaijan relations.
Your position is clear, but let me remind you that almost all world leaders have already sent congratulations when the elections were called several days after the day of voting. But how would
I know that you are an American citizen and you have a particular point of view on this matter.
No, so, but I think our president has been elected.
Excellent.
I leave my preferences outside.
I congratulate you on that you feel happy about that, about your process. So let it be fully completed, and then I will congratulate you for the second time and your president.
Perfect. We will have the opportunity to talk. But right now, what I'm showing on the screen is your post several days ago, in which in Azerbaijan you say Republicans do not give up, and then there is a screenshot of Donald Trump, the current U.S. president's tweet, in which he says, "We will not break, we will not yield, we will never give in, we will never give up, we will never back down, we will never surrender." So do you think that you've interfered somehow in the U.S. political process by retweeting or republishing Trump's defiant message, in which he seems to suggest, not seems to suggest, in which he says that he will not accept the results of a democratic vote?
No, absolutely no. That was, I retweeted that because his slogan consonnated with the slogan which was mine during my time in prison. I said precisely that Republicans never surrender, but that we are Republicans, Republican Alternative Party in Azerbaijan. So that was kind of fun. And that was retweeted not on party on my official page, but on my personal page. So it's absolutely for friends and for fun, not a political position.
Okay.
Yeah.
Chairman Ilgar Mammadov, thank you very much for your time today, and thank you for talking to us way past 1 hour that I requested in the beginning of the interview. We appreciate your time, and we hope you come back to us very soon again, and you will be more free to discuss the results of the U.S. elections then.
Absolutely, yes. I look forward to that. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we would like to thank you for your time today. It was an imposition, 1 hour and 35 minutes. Wow. I'll remind you, our guest today was Ilgar Mammadov, chairman of Real, Republican Alternative Party. He was joining us live from Baku, Azerbaijan. If you liked our conversation today, we invite you to become our subscriber, like the interview, share it on Facebook, on YouTube. Provide your opinion under the video when it becomes available online. From Washington, D.C., I, Ismayıl Jalilov, wish you a very good evening. Thank you. Bye-bye.